On my birthday, an amazing surprise revealed by my family at the restaurant transformed my entire perspective on life. At least, that's what I thought as I walked into the cozy diner where the familiar smell of pancakes and bacon greeted me. The tiny bell above the door jingled, blending with the laughter of my family gathered around a table. But beneath the laughter, I felt a tightness in my chest. At 35, I felt marooned in a life far from what I imagined. As a history teacher, my dreams of inspiring young minds were buried under constant reminders of indifference from students who cared more about their phones than the lessons of the past. Today, a day meant for joy, was clouded by the weight of unfulfilled aspirations and supportive family expectations. I stood in the doorway, hesitating, wondering if I was meant to celebrate another year of mediocrity. After ordering my usual the classic cheeseburger, I forced a smile and joined the raucous laughter that filled the space. My father, with his familiar warm smile, began a heartfelt toast, and my stomach churned in a mix of dread and hope. Would his words veer toward my stagnant career? My heart raced as I thought of the stories I told during history lessons that fell on uninterested ears. I felt as if I was walking on a tightrope strung over my own doubts, balancing between the joy of family and the pressure of my disappointments. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As my father raised his glass in cheers, an unexpected guest entered, the familiar figure of Mr. Solomon, a retired historian. He had been a mentor to my mother, a figure I admired from a distance, but never felt good enough to emulate. His presence shifted the air, bringing a gravity I didn't know I needed. As stories flowed about my parents, my heart tightened at the thought that I had strayed so far from their legacy. What if I measured my worth in missed connections and dreams abandoned? The pressure mounted with every conversation spinning around me. My grandparents revealed plans for a historical road trip, destinations that lit up a spark of hope inside me. But that flicker was dimmed with the reminder of my own failures: a teacher unable to impact lives, an employee stuck in a job he didn't believe in. Conversation shifted, laughter morphing into a cacophony of unresolved tension as Mr. Solomon's stories echoed against the backdrop of my insecurities. Just when I thought the night couldn't unravel further, he let slip a hidden family secret: my great-grandfather's groundbreaking research in an area I adored as a child. This information tore through me like a tempest, unveiling the possibility that my history was richer than the ordinary life I led. Caught between the mounting expectations of my family, the whispers of what I should do, and the gnawing desire to carve my own path, the weight of my own decisions pressed heavily. What would it cost to align my ambitions with those familial legacies? As the cake sat untouched and sentiment enveloped the table once more, I wondered, would I remain stagnant, or muster the courage to chase the legacy I yearned for? The night was still young, but my journey was just beginning. The days following my birthday blurred together, each one a mirror reflecting my doubts and frustrations. I returned to my classroom with an aching sense of futility. The whiteboard stood ready, though my lessons felt hollow, like echoes of a once vibrant craft reduced to muttered phrases. Students slouched in their seats, scrolling through their devices, as if history were just another scrolling feed devoid of significance. A lingering question haunted me: how could I inspire the very souls too distracted to connect with the past? Each time I raised my voice above their noise, I felt like a specter, almost an intruder in a realm I no longer belonged to. Would words break through the digital haze? Or would I only solidify my role as a silent observer, trapped within an invisible barrier? Driven by a sudden surge of defiance, I pulled out an old book from my shelf, the history of my great-grandfather's research, filled with daring explorations and revolutionary ideas. I had to confront the shadow of his legacy. The stories within didn't just inspire, they sparked an urgency inside me. I didn't want another regret pinned to my wall of suffocated dreams. At lunch, I began pitching ideas to my colleagues. What if we create a history project based on personal narratives? Students could explore their own histories while studying the past. The room grew quiet, and for a moment, I felt exposed. Would they support a radical change to the mundane practices we all accepted? But skepticism was replaced with tentative interest. Even Mr. Thompson, the seasoned veteran of the department, nodded. It's not a bad idea, Palmer. Making history personal might just resonate with them. Encouraged, my vision blossomed. The next day, I approached my students with an unusual invitation. We're going to explore your stories and how they intertwine with history. Think about your families, your cultural roots. Everyone has a narrative. The initial reactions simmered with ambivalence. Some questioned its relevance, while others eyed the opportunity to talk about themselves, a rare sparkle igniting in their brows. As I walked home that day, I considered the impossible choice lying ahead, to relentlessly push against a tide of indifference or risk my own vulnerability in pursuit of deeper connections. A week passed and the project unfolded, a patchwork of personal histories entwined with broader themes. Some students embraced the task, revealing their ancestors' struggles, triumphs, and cherished tales, while others recoiled, resistant to peel back the layers of their lives. In their reluctance, I saw reflections of my fears, the fears of unearthing my own hidden narrative tangled in societal expectations. Finally, the day came to present their projects. The classroom transformed into a gallery of vibrant displays and impassioned speeches. I leaned against the back wall as students stepped into the spotlight, sharing pieces of themselves with raw honesty. For the first time, I felt the weight of their history mingle with the lessons of the past, something I hadn't achieved in years of lecture notes. As their voices echoed through the classroom, I caught sight of Mr. Solomon waiting outside. His knowing gaze held a weight of encouragement. With each story shared, I felt a knot in my chest beginning to unravel. Was my journey of discovery also mirrored in my students' evolution? But as the final presentation concluded, they turned to me, wide-eyed and expectant. It was clear they wanted more. Behind their questions lay a mirror reflecting the urgency I had felt. What did I plan to do next? Just as I began to gather my thoughts, a whisper of uncertainty danced on the edges of my mind. The pressing revelation struck again. Was my resolve enough to awaken the dormant history within me, or would I tether myself to the past, forever trapped in a cycle of self-imposed limitations? I knew the next choice loomed close, demanding confrontation. The weight of that moment was palpable, leaving me marveling at the crossroads before me. Would I seize this opportunity to delve deeper, or would the familiar whispers of doubt pull me back? The answers awaited, shrouded in shadows, but one thing was certain: the next step beckoned. The next day arrived with an unsettling mix of anticipation and dread. As I sat at my cluttered desk, papers strewn about like remnants of thought, I wrestled with the urgency to act. My students had ignited something deep within me, a flicker of ambition stifled for too long, urging me to confront my inner demons. The history projects had revealed their stories, their realities intertwined with the grand narrative, yet I stood with my own narrative buried in the shadows. After school, I wandered the halls, still painted with laughter and the last echoes of the day's lessons. Each classroom I passed carried whispers of learning and discovery, but while others fervently prepared for another lesson, I lingered, caught between the comfort of my familiar role and the uncharted waters ahead. I returned home to the stillness of my empty house, where silence hummed like an impending storm. It felt absurd, yet exhilarating, to think about sharing my own story with my students, my fears, my failures, and the legacy that shadowed me. But the deeper question loomed, mocking me: who would care? The weight of self-doubt clung to me, a grim reminder of an unresolved past. That night, I found myself pacing in front of the mirror, rehearsing fragments of my own history. "You matter," I whispered to my reflection, but the words felt like a battle cry in the void, devoid of conviction. What if vulnerability only revealed my inadequacies? The question knotted my stomach. But the realization of my students' eagerness to learn more about me became an unwavering challenge, pushing me toward an uncomfortable reckoning. The next day, I introduced an impromptu component to the history project. "I'll be sharing my story too," I declared, my voice trembling slightly. Instinctively, I searched their faces. Would they see me as a figure of authority or a fallible human being? But curiosity etched in their expressions gave me hope. I decided to own it. Mere words transformed into commitments, and before I knew it, I had laid out the timeline of my life, branching out into the personal impact of history on my own journey. As I recounted tales laced with uncertainty and perseverance, I could see the revelation dawn among my students, an unexpected connection weaving its way through us. For every nod of recognition, I felt a piece of my past dissolve into the acceptance I yearned for. I shared not only the hardships but also the simple joys and discoveries that brought me to where I stood. The more I revealed, the more they leaned in, captivated and connected, but even as I found my voice, another part of me hesitated. Would this endeavor evoke empathy or provoke scrutiny? The self-questioning stirred within, battling the desire to steer the conversation toward the lessons of history. Yet I plowed forward, determined to connect the fractured pieces of lineage and legacy. The line between teacher and student blurred, and suddenly the atmosphere felt charged with an unfamiliar energy. At the presentation's end, a wave of applause surged through the room, mingled with gasps of admiration. I hadn't anticipated their response. Encouraged by their enthusiasm, I sensed a newfound proximity to my purpose, or perhaps a sense of liberation. Still, as the final curtain fell on the day's revelations, something unsettled me. I realized I had only scratched the surface of my own story, and the greater challenge lay ahead. Could I delve deeper into the secrets I'd hidden away, the parts of me that remained unexamined? With tentative steps, I looked directly into their eager faces, aware of my own limitations and the stories tangled within me. The path forward demanded a reckoning, a willingness to confront the intricacies of my lineage and embrace the complexity of my identity. What awaited me in that deeper exploration? The shadows still lingered, and my heart raced at the thought of what I might uncover. Would unveiling my truths fortify my bond with them or unravel me further? As questions buzzed in my mind like restless bees, a singular thought emerged with unwavering clarity: the answers would only unfold if I stepped boldly into my next chapter. The time had come to confront not only my own history but the legacy I could forge in both worlds, past and present. The realization dawned this journey within was just beginning. As the week rolled on, the euphoric aftermath of my presentation began to dissolve into a tightening anxiety. Each day served as a gentle reminder of the unresolved threads in my narrative, as if life itself was nudging me in the direction of deeper inquiry. I found it increasingly challenging to compartmentalize my role as a teacher while confronting the unsettling shadows of my past. The persistent ringing of my phone yanked me from my spiraling thoughts. It was my sister, her voice filled with enthusiasm as she invited me to dinner for my birthday. I hesitated, the thought of celebrating felt incongruous amidst my introspection. Yet, a part of me craved connection, the warmth of family reminding me that I was not alone in this exploration. During the meal, laughter and stories flitted around the table like fireflies, but I remained hyper-aware of an unspoken tension. My sister's bright smile and my parents' easy banter dimmed in comparison to the tumult within me. I wrestled with the urge to share my recent journey, how unveiling my history had left me feeling both exposed and liberating, but fear held me back. What if they dismissed my struggles as mere oversensitivity? However, it was during a lull in conversation when my mother posed a seemingly innocuous question: "What has been your biggest challenge this year?" The moment stretched like elastic, suspended between vulnerability and facade. I could either provide a surface-level answer, a safety net for my inner turmoil, or I could delve into the depths of my recent revelations. The weight of expectation pressed on me, mingling with the joy of celebration, creating a chaotic cocktail of emotions. Deciding to take the plunge, I nodded, meeting my family's eyes with resolve. I've been confronting some deep personal issues, my history and how it shapes who I am. As those words escaped my lips, I felt an immediate shift in the atmosphere. Their faces, once animated, turned contemplative. "I think everyone has a story that they are scared to share," my sister responded, her eyes shining with understanding. And before I knew it, an unexpected dialogue unfolded. Each family member began to peel back layers. My father shared his early career struggles and how he yearned to switch to an art-driven profession, never fully daring to do so. My mother spoke of loss, the quiet lingering of dreams that had faded over time. Even my sister detailed a moment of vulnerability about her own path, revealing how she grappled with a decisive career choice. An illuminating realization struck me in that moment: vulnerability does not only invite scrutiny, it ignites empathy. Listening to their stories, I felt a web of connection forming. The secrets I feared might unravel me instead wove a tapestry of understanding and love. but the comfort of shared experiences did not erase the gnawing uncertainty. The conversation had taken a profound direction, yet I could sense there were deeper recesses of my own past still unreflected and unexplored. After the meal, I found myself alone in the bathroom, gazing into the mirror once more, memories thrumming loudly in my mind. Am I prepared for what I might uncover? I whispered to my reflection, an unseen companion of doubt. What if revealing more stripped away the remaining scaffolding I relied on? Or what if those revelations became stepping stones toward a new strength? I wrestled with the duality of fear and hope, each one clawing at my heart that I resolved then that with each shared moment, I would inch closer to understanding the intricate layers of my own story. Perhaps more importantly, I would invite the same raw honesty I had experienced at the dinner table into my classroom. The next lesson would not be just about history, it would be about legacy, my legacy, imbued with authenticity. So, I devised a plan, one that would require courage but one I recognized as necessary. I would initiate a series of discussions, not just teaching history, but exploring individual experiences that shaped it. But what awaited me in that classroom? And would my students embrace this newfound incorporation of honesty, or recoil back into the safety of their narratives? As I sat with these thoughts swirling around in my mind, a thrilling sense of anticipation began to swell within me. The time had come to exchange silence for stories. Yet deep within, uncertainty lingered. Would embarking on this journey redefine not only how my students saw themselves but also how I perceived my place in the world? The answer shimmered ahead, waiting to be revealed. The following Monday, the classroom felt different, charged with an energy I couldn't quite put my finger on. The students, their eyes bright with youthful curiosity, sensed a shift too. I stood at the front, grappling with the weight of my own anticipation while clutching the lesson plan I had drafted over the weekend. This was not merely another history class, it was to be a space of shared stories, unfiltered and genuine. When the bell rang, a nervous thrill danced in my chest. I greeted my students, their chatter and laughter a welcome sound amidst my swirling thoughts. I apprehensively glanced at the whiteboard, where I had scribbled, "Everyone has a history." It served as both a prompt and a dare. I took a deep breath and embarked on the uncharted waters of vulnerability. Today, let us do something different. My voice wavered slightly, but I pressed on, emboldened by the memories of the dinner table that had reshaped my understanding of connection. We're going to talk about how our personal stories inform the history we learn. A palpable silence enveloped the room. I could see the wheels turning in my students' minds, some furrowing their brows, others exchanging glances. Would they embrace this invitation to share, or retreat into the familiar shell of silence? I opened the floor by sharing my own story, a glimpse into my past that wasn't always comfortable or tidy, recounting the struggles that had forged my identity. The room hung on my words. As I finished, I was met with blank stares, then cautious nodding, and finally, one brave soul raised their hand. "That's really brave of you, Mississippi. Maybe I could give it a try." The words, simple yet profound, broke the dam of hesitation that had snaked through the room. One by one, students began to share snippets of their lives, challenges they faced, successes they celebrated, and dreams they were too afraid to voice. With each story unfurling like petals of a blooming flower, a tapestry of resilience and courage painted the walls of our classroom. It was empowering to witness this exchange. Wasn't just a lesson, it turned into a communion of shared humanity. Yet, beneath the uplifting atmosphere, I grappled with my own internal conflict. While my students discovered their voices, I felt a deeper urge to unearth more of my own overshadowed past. What truths still lay buried in the corners of my mind, waiting for the light? Each story they shared acted like a mirror, reflecting my own unresolved narratives back to me. As the class progressed, I encountered an unexpected facet of my teaching. It wasn't solely about imparting knowledge, it was about mutual discovery. Helping my students confront their histories compelled me to do the same. With each revelation, I felt an ache for an elusive part of myself, one that had been shadowed by years of restraint. That night, I sat at my desk, reflecting on the profound shift in my classroom dynamic. There was a visceral thrill in daring to be open, yet an undercurrent of fear tugged at my heart. Facing one's truth could lead to liberation, but it could also expose painful scars I wasn't yet ready to confront. That I found myself at a crossroads: continue to explore these narratives with my students or protect myself from the potential storms of pathos that could arise. The lies we told ourselves could no longer shield us from our realities. My desire for authenticity clashed with the vulnerability that loomed ahead, a tough but necessary consequence of deeper understanding the stakes had raised. This revelation could redefine not only my teaching but reshape the very foundation of who I wanted to become. As I put down my pen, a thought flickered in my mind. What if this journey could lead to answers I had yet to uncover, answers about the legacy I wanted to leave behind? Determined, I resolved to push the boundaries of my own comfort further. The journey towards understanding did not stop with my students. Maybe I needed to prepare for the consequences of revealing my own hidden truths openly in the very room where I had taken the first steps towards change. Could I truly embrace the raw honesty that I sought to foster, not just in my students but in myself? And if so, what revelations awaited once I dared to share my past in its entirety with those I had come to trust? The horizon of discovery stretched out before me, holding both promise and peril in its embrace. The morning sun streamed through the classroom windows, casting a warm glow on the brightly colored walls. As I arranged the chairs, a whirlwind of thoughts flooded my mind. How was I supposed to navigate today's lesson when my internal landscape felt so turbulent? The exhilarating yet unsettling exploration of identities lingered in the air like a faint melody, beckoning me to uncover layers of my own. I glanced at the clock and reminded myself to breathe. The classroom was quiet as students trickled in, each absorbed in their concerns or conversations, the possibility of shared narratives establishing a fragile bridge between us. With the weight of my intentions filling the space, I sought to approach this new lesson with an even greater vulnerability. Today would not only be about our collective histories but an examination of the truths each of us hesitated to express. Today, I'd like to create a safe space for sharing some of the stories that shape who we are, I announced, my voice steady but laced with an urgency that stirred my stomach. Feel free to share as much or as little as you wish. What we learn today can extend beyond textbooks and charts into our lives. Silence encased the room, a tension thickening the air as students exchanged glances. Would they step into the open, or would my plea for honesty be cast aside in favor of silence? Again, I stood at the precipice of my own vulnerability, ready to delve deeper. When I think of my own story, I realize that it's a tapestry of joy and sorrow, success and failure. I hope to share it with you not just to open up about myself but to show that everyone carries pieces of their past that matter. A soft voice broke through the silence. What do you mean? A shy girl with glasses peered up, her brows slightly furrowed. You're a teacher. You shouldn't feel insecure. I felt a familiar tension rise. Being a teacher doesn't mean I'm not human, I replied, a nervous chuckle escaping my lips. In fact, I believe being transparent can build a stronger bond. It can teach us that growth comes from facing even the darkest corners of ourselves. As I shared more stories of failures, lost opportunities, and moments of doubt, something shifted. The collective skepticism began to melt away, giving way to a camaraderie formed through shared human experiences. Students considered their own histories with more weight, each heartbeat palpable. Slowly, hands began to rise. A young man spoke of his struggle with anxiety, revealing how it influenced his life choices. Another girl shared her family's journey as immigrants and the sacrifices that shaped her identity. Each revelation unfurled like a page in a book that suddenly felt alive. The classroom transformed into a sanctuary of raw emotion, one that sparkled with glimmers of courage, yet the echoes of my own unaddressed truths loomed larger. As I led the discussion, I was confronted by the very depths I wasn't ready to explore. My students were brave, each story a declaration of their humanity, while I stood on the edge, terrified of stepping fully into the light myself. Questions churned within me. Should I dig deeper? Would these revelations do more harm than good? The fragile threads holding me together threatened to fray under the mounting pressure. I could provide guidance, but how could I do that without addressing my hidden fears? The bell rang, jolting me from my thoughts. I watched my students file out, a mixture of exhilaration and introspection on their faces. I felt a knot of tension in my chest, ambivalence swirling within me. Perhaps next time, it was time for me to simply open the floodgates. Who knew the strength that might emerge from my own unraveling? What stories had I buried, long ignored and aching to be unearthed? What awaited on the other side of that honesty, both for me and for my students? Determined to confront my own truths, I penned a further lesson for the next day, ready to challenge myself in ways I hadn't anticipated. The stakes had just risen, and the winds of honesty began to promise their own revelations. Was I prepared to face whatever emerged when I dared to uncover the past I had long kept hidden? The sun hung high in the sky, its heat intensifying as I walked back into the classroom the next day. The air buzzed with anticipation, layered with the residue of yesterday's revelations. I set my belongings down, the weight of the lesson plan feeling heavier than usual as I glanced around, recalling the courage that had unfolded in the room. Today, I was not just a teacher, I was a fellow traveler on a winding road of discovery. As the students filtered in, I noticed their expressions, some were excited, others hesitant. I took a moment to center myself, realizing that today would be more than just a lesson, it would be a journey into the heart of our vulnerabilities. I displayed my lesson plan on the board, which I titled Unmasking Your True Self, deliberately signaling that I intended to extend beyond academic content into personal depths. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice firm yet inviting. "Yesterday was powerful. Today, I want us to explore how we mask our true selves, the feelings we conceal, and the stories we often keep hidden away." Whispers rippled through the room. A few students exchanged glances of uncertainty, while others seemed eager to engage. This time, the atmosphere was electric with a mixture of apprehension and excitement. I needed to set the tone right from the start. To begin, I'll take my own mask off. I'll share a story about a moment in my life when I felt unworthy and how that shaped my view of myself. As I shared, I could feel the walls coming down. I spoke about the pressures of achievement, the voices that plagued me in quiet moments indicating I wasn't enough. The vulnerability surged through my words, and my heart raced as I looked at the students absorbing my confession. When I ended, the room was thick with silence, the weight of shared truth hanging in the air. "Thank you for sharing that," a girl in the back whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't know teachers had struggles like that." I nodded, encouraging her to speak. "Your honesty reminds us that we are human. Let us create space for each other to share similar experiences." One by one, students began to share their own stories. A boy revealed his battle with the need for perfection, explaining how the pressure from home had suffocated his sense of joy. A girl described her fear of rejection, illustrating how it had held her back in friendships and activities. Each account bared layers of pain and resilience, threading our stories together like an intricate piece of fabric. Yet, as others spoke, I felt a tightening restriction within myself, an unexpressed truth whining against my resolve. While I positioned myself as a facilitator of their experiences, an insistent whisper urged me deeper to confront my own barriers that felt increasingly suffocating. Deep breaths steadied me as I debated whether to dive into my most profound fears. But doing so risked shattering the professional mask I had donned for so long. A tremor of doubt coiled around my passion for uplifting my students. The moment hovered before me: should I continue to lead them through their pain while my own remained shrouded? As I wrestled with my choices, the room swayed toward an unexpected brilliance. One student began to articulate a connection they felt not only to their own struggles but to mine as well. "It's kind of like we're all wearing these masks, hiding the real stories behind them," he observed, eyes gleaming with newfound insight. "What would happen if we just let them drop?" The honesty in his words echoed within me like a bell tolling at dusk. His courage ignited something within. The very essence of what I had feared to confront began roaring to life. What awaited me on the other side of my honesty? Was I willing to face the very truths I had guarded so closely? With the students opening doors to their vulnerabilities, I felt the urge to step forward. "You're right. What if we dropped our masks?" I could hardly believe the words as they formed. The stakes had risen beyond mere lesson plans. This was an opportunity for collective transformation. Prepared to share the shadow of my hidden truth, I glimpsed the fragility of my own being, balanced between fear and empowerment. The bell rang, but the sound felt distant, overshadowed by the noise of critical inner conflict. Would I lead my students deeper into the light, risking my own spirit in the process? Or would I retreat into safer shadows, denying the growth that lay in open honesty? The moment had arrived, and with it, a pivotal choice hung heavily in the air. What lay ahead might change not only my life but also the lives of those I strove to guide. As the classroom settled into a hush, I lingered on the precipice of revelation, the weight of my hidden truths resting heavily on my chest. I watched the students, their faces eager, brimming with anticipation for the next chapter of this emotional exploration. What lay ahead felt like stepping onto a tightrope, and the stakes had never felt higher. What would happen if we just let them drop? I echoed silently in my mind, the words hanging like a challenge in the air. My internal battle raged on, the instinct to guard my vulnerability warred against the urge to advocate for authenticity. The sweetness of honesty beckoned, but editing my truths was second nature. Did the role of teacher demand such detachment, or was it my own fear that kept me shackled? It was now or never. The realization that sharing my truth might empower my students sparked a flicker of courage within. They had drawn me into their fears, and perhaps it was time to reciprocate. "All right, everyone," I said, choosing my words carefully while my heart raced. Before we dive deeper into the discussion, I want to share something personal, a point in my life when I felt lost, much like some of you described. The room shifted slightly, breaths caught in anticipation. The decision to reveal my experiences seemed monumental. I've often felt the pressure to be perfect, whether it was in my academic career or how others perceive me. I remember a time when I felt I just wasn't enough. I began, recalling a moment from my past that had haunted me since. As I spoke, I glanced at students' faces, noticing their curiosity. Was it disbelief or empathy mirroring back at me? In college, I watched others easily pass exams while I struggled, feeling like a fraud. I wore my mask of confidence, hiding the dread that my efforts weren't good enough. I continued, the vulnerability flowing. I missed out on friendships and experiences, paralyzed by the fear of judgment. But one day, a friend pulled me aside and told me that it was okay to be imperfect, that our worth isn't defined by grades or accolades. A realization washed over me. I could be the catalyst for change, not just in my students, but within myself. There was an authenticity in exposing my weakness as a strength. I could break down the barriers of my self-image, all the while nurturing theirs. A hushed response echoed through the room, as hands slowly began raising, seeking guidance, connection, affirmation. Each hesitant story that followed pulled threads of insight closer together, filling the space with shared struggles. The air became charged with a renewed purpose, both in the students' stories and in my unexplored self. Stripped of pretense, we began to weave a narrative of resilience and aspiration. As the last student shared, I marveled at how collectively sharing our hidden truths had begun the healing process for them and for me. It was a delicate balance, revealing oneself while inviting others to do the same. Still, a lingering voice in the back of my mind cautioned me against complete surrender. What lay in wait for me if I fully immersed myself in this newfound authenticity? With the bell inches away from ringing, I glanced at the students' attentive faces, fresh connections glimmering like stars after a long night. "Now that we've shared, how do we feel?" I asked, encouraging them to reflect. The atmosphere was charged, the air thick with burgeoning hope and deepened understanding. Suddenly, the bell rang, cutting short the moment as students began to gather their belongings. Yet, the energy of our shared experience resonated vividly. I felt it deep within. I had crossed an invisible threshold. As they filed out, some exchanging laughs, others continuing to engage in quiet contemplation, an unexpected message buzzed from my phone. Curiosity gripped me. I picked it up, recognizing the sender. It was my mother. As I unlocked it, the message popped up with a bright emoji. "We can't wait to surprise you tonight. Ready for a big reveal?" I blinked, my heart racing anew, not from the classroom, nor from the journey I had just shared, but at the implied promise of something deeper awaiting me. Had I made progress only to unearth more questions, more truths, hidden not just inside me but on the cusp of my family life? As I closed my laptop, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the monitor. I was no longer shrouded in the same familiar mask. The question loomed in my mind: what would this evening reveal, not just about my family, but also about myself? The evening air was thick with anticipation as I made my way to the restaurant. My mother's cryptic message had stirred a mix of excitement and anxiety deep within me. What surprise awaited? I pondered the question continuously, reflecting on how my recent classroom experience had shifted my internal landscape. Embracing vulnerability had felt transformative, yet I didn't know how to align that newfound authenticity with my family's expectations. As I stepped inside, the dimmed lights illuminated a gathering of familiar faces, my family, friends, and a few special acquaintances. Laughter echoed off the walls, and I felt a wave of warmth wash over me, conflicting with the apprehension brewing beneath the surface. Was I now the person eager to embrace open connections, or was I still the hesitant self, lurking in the shadows of fear? "Happy birthday!" The chorus rang out, pulling me into the vibrant moment. I forced a smile, accepting hugs and well wishes, each gesture reminding me of the familial duties I often took for granted. They were celebrating me, yet the thought of revealing my recent shifts in perspective loomed heavily. A part of me yearned to share my journey, to show them how far I'd come, while another part remained locked in a cage of uncertainty. As we settled into our seats, I scanned the room of smiling faces and caught my mother's gaze. Her eyes sparkled with pride and perhaps an inkling of expectation. It struck me how I was looming at the intersection of personal growth and familial obligations. Do they see me differently now? I questioned silently. Once the clinking of cutlery subsided and the first dish was served, my mother stood up. "Everyone, I want to toast to my incredible child. It's been a remarkable year," she announced, her eyes glistening with pride. My breath hitched in my throat. "You've shown such courage and resilience. Watching you transform has been a gift to us all." Her words wrapped around me like a comforting blanket, yet I felt exposed, an invitation to also share my truth. I wasn't the same person any longer. The experience with my students had lit a fire within, propelling me toward authenticity in every sphere of my life, even within my family dynamics. "Thank you, Mom," I started, the pulse of anxiety thrumming beneath my skin. This year has indeed been significant for me. Seeing my struggles for what they are has led me to embrace authenticity. My heart raced as I continued, and each word felt like a layer stripped away from the facade I had worn for years. I realized that my worth isn't tied to what I achieve, but rather in accepting myself fully, faults and all. The table fell silent. All eyes turned toward me, uncertainty mingling with curiosity. I had broached the threshold I'd long avoided. Would they understand? A few moments passed, and then my younger brother spoke up, a hint of awe in his voice. "You always seemed so confident. I had no idea you felt that way." The conversational ripple ignited in the room. One by one, family members began chiming in, sharing their own hidden insecurities and triumphs. The exchange was profound. It felt as though we were weaving a new understanding amongst ourselves, elevating our connections beyond shallow pleasantries to something much deeper. I leaned back, devouring this shared vulnerability. The gentle laughter, the understanding nods, and the familiar yet fresh exchanges left me buoyed by my family's openness. It dawned on me, their expectations of perfectionism mirrored my own fears, and here we were, shedding those very illusions together. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere pulsed with a newfound energy, an intricate dance of connection blossoming in ways I had hoped but never anticipated. I was shedding not only layers of self-doubt but also the expectations I always assumed weighed heavily on everyone. However, as the final remarks of the night settled in, I sensed a looming question at the back of my mind. What impact would this evening's revelations have on my ongoing journey toward authenticity? How would this newfound openness affect my relationships, particularly with my mother, who had unknowingly provided the battleground for my own internal conflicts? As I left the restaurant, a sense of possibility enveloped me. Had I truly embarked on a path towards change? Or were we merely skirting the surface of what deeper truths awaited us just below? I glanced at my mother during our ride home, eager to explore the conversation that had barely skimmed the surface. The night had transformed me. Now, it was time to confront the next chapter of my life, one filled with uncharted depths waiting to be explored. In the weeks that followed that birthday dinner, a palpable shift settled into my spirit. My family and I had discovered a deeper understanding of one another, fostering connections that had long remained dormant. This newfound openness didn't merely invigorate our family gatherings, it ignited a spark within my teaching as well. Every day, I walked into my classroom buoyed by the realization that authentic communication could transform lives. Mine included. As autumn approached, I doubled down on the strategy one had started with my students. We embarked on an initiative titled Legacy of Lived Stories. This wasn't just a history project, it transformed into an exploration of identity interwoven with the teachings of the past. Each lesson morphed into an enriching dialogue where my students became the narrators of their histories. I shared fragments of my journey, intertwining my experiences with the lessons we studied, reinforcing the notion that history was not just a series of events but the sum of individual stories. The students responded with unexpected enthusiasm. Each class became a tapestry of voices. Rarely did the bell signal the end of a lesson without an eruption of questions and insights. They began to weave their narratives into the lessons, connecting the struggles of their ancestors with the aspirations they clung to today. With each passing day, the clutter of doubt that once crowded my mind dissipated. I realized I was making an impact, one that stretched beyond my own insecurities. One fateful afternoon, I stood before the class as they presented their final projects, a culmination of our journey together. The atmosphere vibrated with palpable energy, the walls echoed with laughter, resilience, and tears. Each presentation revealed not merely facts but the very essence of what each student believed and who they aspired to become. And as they shared, vindication and pride swelled within me. My resolve to foster authenticity had borne fruit. As the last student finished, a wave of applause surged through the room. My heart swelled with fulfillment. In this space, amidst echoes of stories shared and dreams revealed, I understood that I had transcended my past. No longer did I feel dependent on external validation. I had forged my path and claimed my narrative. Standing there, vibrant and recognized, I understood that worth came from embracing the entirety of oneself, but my journey wasn't finished. Inspired by the breakthrough in my classroom, I approached the administration to propose a new initiative, a program dedicated to storytelling centered around personal history and familial legacies. While walking into that meeting, a sense of anticipation fed my courage. I had transformed from a passive participant in my fate to a proactive force for change. Unchained by fear, I presented my vision. Imagine, I said, if we could create a platform for students to share their stories, bridging gaps between cultures and generations. Allowing them the freedom to find significance in their histories could radically transform our school environment. The room filled with thoughtful murmurs. The seed of possibility had been sown. Weeks later, the school district approved the initiative, and I was given a position to lead the program. It felt surreal. I was no longer just a teacher stuck in a rut. I was now a catalyst for change, creating a legacy of connection and meaning for my students that would outlast me. With the completion of the project, an unexpected ripple touched both my personal and professional life. My family gathered again, this time not just to celebrate a birthday but to acknowledge the legacy we were crafting together as a unit. The discussions flowed seamlessly, delving into what we each stood to preserve from our narratives. Those fears I had once guarded began to dissolve in the light of shared stories. As I found support where I felt none existed, the final moment crystallized a sense of satisfaction. I led the initiative in conjunction with the dialogues within my family, confronting my own reservations and stepping into the clarity of my identity. The journey was far from over, but I stood supported by voices from both my students and family, assured that I was not in this alone. In that moment, I realized that I had navigated from mere awareness of a fractured past to forging a healed identity. The history I carried was not a burden but a canvas for resilience, a source of strength for both myself and those around me. I achieved recognition not just as an educator but as a voice for authenticity, inspiring others to embrace their stories. Now I understood, true legacy isn't measured by achievements on a resume, but by the lives impacted through honest narratives shared. The revelations propelled me to a place where I was finally comfortable in my own skin, confident in my ability to inspire change. As I moved forward, I encouraged everyone to embark on their journey, seeking not just to rewrite their pasts but to redefine their futures. Each day was a new opportunity to share, to learn, and to grow. And thus, my journey continues. It is here I call upon you, embrace your vulnerabilities. You need to subscribe now to this channel. Don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you to push through your own narratives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let others find their paths. Comment below with your thoughts on personal growth and share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this journey. Don't wait even one more second, your story deserves to be shared.